the first to know Nsem-Pii TV.
The reality is now setting on NDCs wɔ ɛbɔ akɛseɛ E-levy betting tax a wɔn ɛyɛ adeɛ a wɔn ɛka sɛ wɔn bɛtwa mu na IMF abreak silence. Ne nyinaa ne sɛ wɔn sɛ weekend yi ɛyɛ adeɛ a wɔn ba Ghana na yɛn nyinaa nim sɛ it is expected sɛ next month sɛ John Dramani Mahama aban ɛne ne NDC ɛsɛ wɔn kɔ present budget for 2025. Now we have already yɛn nyinaa nim sɛ IMF program no ɔmo tally ne nyinaa together with these taxes involved. Now research ama abɛda adi sɛ about 10 billion if say E-levy and the betting tax and the rest are scrapped. Na ɛno ama IMF de mirika ten weekend yi abusuafoɔ yɛ adeɛ a kyerɛ sɛ ato Forson week yi deɛ ɛnyɛ adeɛ a ɔbɛda because ɛsɛ ɔyɛ ne maths ne calculations yie na wɔn stormy Ghana na deliberations no ɛbɛkɔ so already minority so atrigger asend a letter to IMF on Bank of Ghana governor appointment yabaeɛ charges a ɛyɛ against him in court na Mahama baeɛ watumi withdraw all those charges na yɛ acquit no. Minority atwerɛ ho krataa ɛde akɔma John Dramani Mahama sɛ one rescinding a decision on the Bank of Ghana governor and the deɛ ebesi because we're breaching the banking acts of the Republic of Ghana. Na timi ne wɔ kasa yi deɛ ɛyɛ ntutu a NDC foɔ bɛtuku Ghana foɔ ani unfounded claims a wɔn bɛyɛɛyɛ betting tax ɛne E-levy a wɔn baeɛ nkyɛn yɛ ate sɛ wɔn so wɔn ntumi nsan nyɛ biem na nsɛ koraa deɛ yɛate koraa ne sɛ betting tax wɔn sɛ wɔn bɛ maintain no na wɔn de ayɛ sports ne yie na abusuafoɔ nsɛm ama ato Forson da a wɔna ɔkɔɔ vetting akɔkɛka nsɛm bebree na wɔno betting tax ne E-levy ne deɛ wɔbɛtwa mu fi sɛ ɛyɛ ahoɔdendeɛ. IMF abreak silence sɛ weekend yi wɔn ba na wɔn ne Ghana abɛtutu nkɔmmɔ na yɛntie emu nsɛm.
Weekend for crucial talks on the economy and the 2025 budget. Here's George Affe with the latest.
The visit by the IMF team is coming at a time that Ghana is getting ready for the next round of program engagement later this year. That fourth review, Joy Business understands, will be based on the fiscal data of the country ending December 2024. However, for this particular visit, which is not a review mission engagement, but will be purely based on the economy. This is because this administration has talked about resetting the economy. Therefore, the IMF wants to understand how this will be done and its impact on the broader IMF program. The team would also want to get some update on the 2025 budget, which will be presented to Parliament next month. This is because whatever policy measures that government will announce should be in line with the broader IMF program. Another issue that would come up strongly during the 5-day visit with the progress that Ghana has made on restructuring its debt with external creditors and how it is planning to complete the process when it comes to engaging the commercial creditors. The fund would also be looking forward to see how government will be planning to fill the more than 10 billion cedis revenue hole that will be created when Finance Minister Dr. Forson goes ahead to remove some taxes like the COVID-19 levy, betting tax, and the E-levy in the 2025 budget.
Well, joining me on Zoom, Manager Macroeconomic Research, GCB Bank PLC, Carriage Boutique. Good afternoon to you. Thanks for joining us. So, just how crucial are these talks, especially after this new government has signaled it may request some changes to the IMF program and an extension probably?
Oh, good afternoon, and good afternoon to your listeners. I think it's quite routine for each one of the budgets under program. You won't have to get the IMF's input as to your projections and how that tallies with the overall expectations under the program, the targets, and how you're going to achieve that, your revenue projections, your expenditure assumptions, and all that. and then the programs and policies you are going to roll out and how that will support or distort the overall macro balance and then the correction of the economy. Remember, the theme for the IMF for the last review has been for Ghana to stay the course on fiscal consolidation, and there are predefined parameters that need to be met in that regard. So these will likely be conversations to align. I'm sure by now the finance minister and his team would have put together some numbers, and they would have had a sense of where we are headed on the fiscal side of things now. So they'll go through those numbers, agree, disagree on issues, and then fine-tune them, ultimately in getting ready for the presentation somewhere maybe later in March, really. So I think it's to be expected under the program. And maybe where it gain extra significance may be the promise of the current government that they would have to look at some of the program parameters and renegotiate some terms. I am not sure if that is coming in this particular meeting we are talking about, but if it does, then it would also be expected in that you will have to fit your programs and policies into the IMF program. I mean, that program was designed by the actual government. They had clearly their programs and policies and priorities set in there, and the fiscal parameters and limitations were defined based on those. So if you are having a new direction and you are talking about revenue mobilization in different ways, you are talking about new expenditure priorities and all that, it's a matter of aligning to see what is possible, what is not possible, where to put the limits and all that, and conversations about what timelines do we need to even achieve what targets and all that. So I guess it's a routine monitoring exercise from the IMF side and a routine consultation exercise even from the government of Ghana side to try to align on what the targets are and what programs are being rolled out and how that fits into the assumptions under the program.
Well, speak about what is possible and what is not. The government has indicated it's going to take off some taxes. We expect that announcement probably in the 2025 budget. How are they going to convince the IMF that this is the right way to go? How are they going to make up for the revenue? I mean, what do you anticipate they are going to tell the IMF?
Well, yes, I think Atu Forson set the tone during his vetting. He's talking about quality and efficiency of expenditure as opposed to if you like, raising more revenue as in imposing new taxes and all that. If you look at the 2025 indicative budget, I mean, the three taxes that are under question will rake in just around 10 billion. If you are cutting off 10 billion, the question is, how do you close the gap? What is expected growth in revenue for the year? Where is it going to come from? Where do we do the adjustment? Where does compliance enforcement come in? And he also was quite heavy on expenditure, front-loaded expenditure rationalization.
Okay.
My argument has been that the budget as it is already very rigid. We know the cost items on the budget and what percentage of our revenue consumes. So there is only a marginal room for cuts. But then the argument will be if you are doing front-loaded fiscal consolidation in what areas, and how does it jeopardize or support the fiscal consolidation and, if you like, the correction in the fiscals that we are seeing. I think those are the arguments they must make and make forcefully back with numbers to the IMF to be convincing that, yes, we can cut taxes, but yes, we can rationalize expenditure also, and then we can stay within the limits of the program. And even if there are adjustments to the timelines of the program, the overall projections to fit into those revised timelines and ultimately the targets and expectations under the program.
We've got just a minute, Courage. We are going to be talking about the debt restructuring program as well as energy sector debts. How well do you think the government has done, really, the country, I should say? I mean, the new government just assumed office.
I think the debt restructuring is almost out of the way. What is left is the commercial side of things, which I understand negotiations are underway. I think the bigger problem is the energy sector issues. You talked about ECG and then how much they are collecting. You talk about the legacy issues and all that. There has to be a way to resolve it. And I think the first step is to stop those if you like, arrears that go to the Ministry of Finance at the end of every month out of under collection from ECG. We need to stop that. And how do we do that? Is it tariff adjustment? We need to take the bold decisions so that we stop the leak or where the bloat is coming from and then tackle now the legacy issues. I think that is the point they need to start from. There's the talk of privatization of ECG. I'm not sure that is a solution, but I think if it's a tariff issue, let's deal with the tariff issue. There are two main issues there. If you like, transmission losses and technical losses, what are the solutions to them? One of them will need a huge capital outlay, and others are just behavioral changes and enforcing compliance. We need to start from those angles, and then from there we can proceed into the weightier issues, really. But if we deal with the recurring issues in the energy sector, and then we can now focus on the structural issues, or if you like, the legacy issues, then we would have been making progress to solving the energy sector problems.
Okay. All right, Courage Boti, I appreciate your time with us. Manager, Macroeconomic Research, GCB Bank PLC, I appreciate your time. Thank you. All right, you're watching The Marketplace. Still ahead, the Joy Business Advisory Series. We're putting the focus on environmental, social, and governance ECG principles, which are becoming a requirement for businesses. Don't go anywhere. Well, whilst large corporations often have dedicated resources for ESG compliance and integration, small and medium-sized enterprises face unique challenges. Well, today on the Joy Business Advisory Series, Osei Asansu-Entry, Senior Manager for Governance, Risk and Compliance Services at KPMG, joins me in studio to discuss practical steps of how SMEs can embark on their ESG journey. Thanks for joining us here on the Marketplace and on the Joy Business Advisory Series. First off, what are the current compliance expectations and key ESG factors that SMEs?
It's great to be here. I mean, as you mentioned in your introduction, ESG is topical now, and not just for the large corporates. It's important that our small and medium enterprises also catch up with all that is happening. I mean, ESG in simple terms is a framework that, you know, it's being used to measure businesses' stewardship towards one, the environment. Number two is the society, the social aspect of it. And then governance. I mean, governance in terms of how the business is set up, how the business is structured for sustainability. I always like to go back to the definition of sustainability by the UN, which goes as ability to meet the needs of today without compromising the needs of the future. We have our SMEs that we believe that it's important that they survive beyond just now. And therefore, to your question, it's very important that SMEs embrace this whole concept. Key amongst the priorities, one, environmental. What stewardship are we having towards the environment that we source all our raw materials from to produce, to get into business, our society, our employees, our stakeholders, our customers. I think you had a session last time around customer experience, which is very important for SME. If you have your customers, if you have your right strategies towards them, you're able to earn their loyalty, which for you as an SME is a good business position for you. And then I also mentioned about the sustainability of the business itself. I mean, we have a challenge of our SMEs not typically going beyond first generation. And the question is why? Do we have the right structure such that if you, the vision bearer, you are no longer available, somebody can also take up the vision and run with it. So it's very important for businesses, especially our SMEs, to embrace this concept.
And so how do these compliance expectations differ between SMEs and large corporates?
Typically, you'd have these compliance expectations more stringent on the large corporates. And I mean, expectedly, because they control much of the value in terms of even investments that are coming in there. They tend to get much of it, and therefore the requirements on them are stringent. It's not even just about the local requirements. There are also global requirements or global compliance expectations of them, because now it's one world that we are all playing or doing business in. So global compliance requirements are also heavy on them. But because these SMEs usually tap from the resources of these large corporates, some of these compliance expectations on the big corporates some way, somehow, are transferred to them, so that whilst as they meet those expectations, then invariably the large corporate also is meeting it. So it's tiered in some sorts, but just as there are requirements for the large corporates, there are also some level of requirements or expectations from the small business.
What, just by way of education, shed some light on the expectations for SMEs.
Okay, so you know that based on the business or your line of business, your expectations will be different. So for example, a typical business that is in, let's say, the agri-business or manufacturing, you'd have your EPA regulations to deal with. You'd have some requirements from the Standards Authority to deal with. You'd have some requirements on our Labor Act to deal with, because you are dealing with people. Some chemicals, or based on the line of service or line of business that you are in, the requirements will differ. And then also now what we are seeing with our small businesses is, because they're also sourcing funds from these large corporates, some of the expectation, the covenants that these large corporates have with their development partners are being transferred to them. So for instance, if you're supposed to have, let's say, a governing board as an SME, and it's because it's a requirement from the facility that probably you're sourcing from, a bank A or bank B, then that again becomes also a compliance expectation.
Do you know that you don't need thousands of dollars or exceptional grades to relocate abroad?
I use this strategy, and for the last 7 years, I have been living, working, and raising my kids here in Canada. It was a fully funded scholarship.